In a space alley, an alien cat child offered me 10,000 credits and smiled, "Congrat, you're my dad." The space station called Vierk's Junction never slept. Its lights stayed bright, its engines hummed like distant thunder, and its alley stayed full of people who did not want to be seen. Traders, smugglers, refugees, broken soldiers, and forgotten workers all passed through its metal veins every day. Somewhere high above, diplomats spoke in clean rooms and soft chairs. Far below, in the narrow service levels, life was harder and colder. Evan Hale walked through one of those lower levels with his hands in his jacket pockets. His boots were worn, his coat patched more than once, and his face carried the tired look of someone who had stopped expecting luck a long time ago. He was human, which made him noticeable even here, but he had learned how to move without drawing attention. Head down. Steady pace. No sudden turns. He had once been a cargo pilot for a mid-tier shipping guild. That life was gone now. A bad contract, a corporate cover-up, and one abandoned crew later, Evan had been dropped from every legal registry that mattered. Now he survived by fixing things, carrying boxes, or doing jobs people did not want recorded. Tonight, he was heading back to his rented sleep pod with just enough credits for food and station fees. Not enough for comfort. Never enough for that. The alley he chose was a shortcut, narrow and dim, filled with pipes running along the walls and steam leaking from broken vents. The floor was wet with recycled water and oil. Neon signs flickered overhead, half of them written in languages Evan could not read. Halfway through, something small stepped into his path. Evan stopped instantly. The figure was short, very short, child-sized. At first, Evan thought it was a lost pet drone or some kind of service unit. Then it looked up. Big eyes, slitted pupils. Soft fur, light gray with darker stripes. Triangular ears that twitched slightly. A thin tail wrapped around its leg. An alien child, more specifically a cat-like alien child. Evan's muscles tensed. This was bad, very bad. Lost alien children meant trouble no matter the species. Some were protected by powerful governments. Others were bait for traps. And some were worse. The child smiled. It was a wide, bright smile, full of confidence that did not belong on someone so small. "Hello," the child said in broken trade common. The voice was light and cheerful. "You human, yes." Evan did not answer right away. He scanned the alley with his eyes, checking corners, vents, and shadows. No movement, no drones, no hidden figures. Still, he did not relax. "That depends," Evan said carefully. "Who's asking?" The child nodded as if this was the correct response. It reached into a small pouch hanging from its side. Evan's hand moved closer to the stun baton under his coat. The child pulled out a credit chip, not a cheap one. Not scratched or old. It was clean, metallic blue with a golden core that glowed softly. Evan's breath caught before he could stop it. That kind of chip was rare. The child held it out with both hands. "I give you 10,000 credits." Evan stared at the chip. Then at the child, then back at the chip. "That's not funny," he said. "Put that away." The child tilted its head. "Why, it is correct." Evan laughed once, short and sharp. "Kid, I don't know who put you up to this, but—" "I am not a kid," the child said politely. "I am small." That stopped Evan for a second. The child continued, still smiling. "I give you 10,000 credits and you accept responsibility." Evan frowned. "Responsibility for what?" The child's tail flicked once. "For me." Before Evan could react, the child stepped closer and gently pressed the credit chip into his hand. The chip was warm, real. Then the child looked up at him and smiled even wider. "Congrat," the child said. "You're my dad." The words hit Evan harder than a punch. "What?" he said. At that exact moment, a soft mechanical sound echoed down the alley. A scanner ping. Station level. Official. Evan's eyes widened. He grabbed the child without thinking, pulling them close to his chest, and turned just as a security drone floated past the alley entrance. Its sensors swept the area, light beams sliding over walls and pipes. The drone paused. Evan held his breath. The child, instead of panicking, calmly pressed its face into Evan's coat and went still. After a long second, the drone moved on. Evan did not wait. He turned and ran. He did not stop until he reached an abandoned maintenance hatch several levels down, hidden behind a broken panel. He forced it open, slipped inside, and sealed it behind him. Only then did he sink down against the wall, breathing hard. "What in the void was that?" he muttered. The child slipped out of his arms and sat neatly on the floor, tail curled around its feet. "Thank you for running," the child said. "That was correct behavior." Evan stared at it. "You almost got us both arrested." "No," the child replied. "Captured. Arrested is for crimes." "I have committed none." Evan rubbed his face. "You handed me 10,000 credits and called me your dad in public." "Yes. That's not normal." The child considered this. "For humans, no." Evan froze. "What do you mean, for humans?" The child's ears twitched. "My species has emergency selection rights." Evan slowly sat up straighter. "Say that again, slowly." "When my caretakers died," the child said calmly, "I was permitted to choose a protector under interstellar child survival law. I selected you." Evan's heart began to pound. "That's not how it works," he said. "You can't just pick someone." "I can," the child replied. "I did." Evan pulled the credit chip from his pocket and looked at it closely. His wrist implant automatically scanned it. The result appeared in his vision. Valid transfer. There was a small burn mark on the child's sleeve. One ear had a tiny tear at the tip. "Where are your parents?" Evan asked quietly. The smile faded just a little. "They are gone," the child said. "The ship was boarded. I escaped." Evan closed his eyes. "Why me?" he asked. The child answered without hesitation. "Because you are human. That's it." "Yes." Evan let out a bitter laugh. "You know humans don't have a good reputation out here, right?" The child nodded. "Yes, you are violent when protecting family. You are stubborn when logic says surrender. You do not abandon chosen bonds." Evan opened his eyes and looked at the small alien in front of him. "That's not a compliment," he said softly. "It is survival data," the child replied. Silence filled the maintenance room. The hum of the station pressed in around them. Evan ran a hand through his hair. "What's your name?" "I am called Neri," the child said. "What is yours, Dad?" Evan flinched. "Don't call me that." Neri tilted its head. "Temporary designation, then." Evan sighed. "My name S. Evan." "Evan," Neri repeated, tasting the word. "Yes, that fits." Evan stood slowly. "Listen, Neri, I didn't agree to this. I can't protect you. I don't have power. I don't have money. I barely have a place to sleep." "You have already protected me," Neri said. "You ran. You hid me. You did not trade me." Evan opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Somewhere above them, alarms sounded faintly. Not emergency alarms. Search pings. Neri looked up. "They will look for me now." Evan swallowed. "Who is they?" "Many," Neri replied honestly. Evan exhaled slowly. He had spent years avoiding attention, avoiding responsibility, avoiding attachments that could be used against him. And now, in one dirty space alley, a small alien child had placed 10,000 credits in his hand and declared him family. Evan looked down at Neri. "All right," he said quietly, "we move. We stay off main levels and you don't call me your dad in public." Neri smiled again, bright and trusting. "Yes, Dad, Evan." Evan shook his head, already knowing his life had just changed forever. Evan did not stop moving until his legs began to ache. He led Neri through forgotten service corridors, broken lifts, and narrow crawl spaces meant for cables, not people. The lower levels of Vierk's Junction were a maze that only desperate souls learned to navigate, and Evan knew them well. Neri followed closely, light on their feet, tail swaying slightly for balance. The child never complained, never slowed him down. That alone made Evan uneasy. They finally reached an old storage bay sealed with a rusted manual lock. Evan forced it open and pulled them inside. The room was dark, cold and empty, except for stacked crates that had not been touched in years. Evan sealed the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. Neri sat down calmly on a crate and looked around with interest. "This place is safe for now," the child said. "For now," Evan repeated. He slid down to the floor and pressed his palms into his eyes. "I need to understand exactly what you've done to me." Neri blinked. "I chose survival." Evan lowered his hands and looked at the child. "You chose me, that's the problem." "Yes." "Do you know what happens to humans who get involved in interstellar custody laws?" Evan asked. "Especially ones without status," Neri thought for a moment. "They are pressured, threatened, sometimes removed." Evan gave a humorless smile. "Good, at least you know." "Still," Neri said, "humans remain effective protectors." Evan stood up and paced the room. "You keep saying that. Why are humans so special to your people?" Neri folded their hands in their lap. "My species studies behavior. Humans respond to emotional bonds with extreme commitment, even when it is dangerous, even when it costs them everything." "That's not always a good thing," Evan said. "It is when you are small and hunted," Neri replied. Evan stopped pacing. "Hunted?" he asked. Neri's ears flattened slightly. "My people are rare, we are valuable, our biology is useful to many industries, genetic research, neural mapping, companion bonding programs." Evan's jaw tightened. "You mean slavery?" "Some call it partnership," Neri said quietly. "Others do not bother with names." Evan felt a surge of anger he did not expect. He clenched his fists, then forced himself to relax. "Who were your parents?" he asked. "They were scholars," Neri replied. "They were transporting data cores. Someone wanted them." "And you escaped," Neri nodded. "They made sure I did." Evan turned away, staring at the metal wall. He knew that kind of story too well. Different faces, same ending. "How long until station security puts this together?" Evan asked. "Soon," Neri said. "The credit transfer flagged dependent status. That triggers review." Evan cursed under his breath. "So every official system now thinks I'm your legal guardian?" "Yes." "And if I try to give you up," Neri looked at him steadily, "then you would violate interstellar child survival law. Punishment varies by species and station." Evan laughed softly. "Of course it does." Silence settled between them. Evan activated his wrist implant and pulled up the law file linked to the credit chip. The text scrolled in front of his eyes, dense and cold. "Emergency dependent claim. Species, Felric skin. Conditions, loss of primary caretakers. Right of selection, valid. Binding period, indefinite until reviewed by recognized authority." Evan closed the file. "They really didn't leave any loopholes," he muttered. "My people learned long ago," Neri said, "that loopholes kill children." Evan looked down at the small alien. "You planned this?" "Yes," Neri said simply. "From the start." "I observed humans for many cycles," Neri replied. "I chose carefully." Evan shook his head. "You're not a child." "I am young," Neri corrected. "Not helpless." Evan sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "That might be the scariest thing you've said so far." A faint vibration passed through the walls. Distant engines, ships moving. Evan's instincts told him something had shifted. "Someone searching the lower decks," he said. "Yes," Neri agreed. "They will avoid open confrontation at first. Humans draw attention." Evan raised an eyebrow. "You keep saying that like it's a threat." "It is," Neri said. "And a shield." Evan knelt in front of Neri. "Listen to me. If we do this, if I protect you, people will get hurt. Me included." Neri met his eyes. "If you do not, I will be taken. That outcome is worse." Evan held the child's gaze for a long moment, then he looked away. "All right," he said. "First rule, you stay close. You do exactly what I say." "Yes," Neri replied. "Second rule. No more public declarations." Neri tilted their head. "But it is legally accurate." "I don't care," Evan said. "We survive first." Neri nodded. "Understood." Evan stood and checked the room. "We need supplies, food, filters, fake IDs." "I can assist," Neri said. Evan snorted. How Neary reached into their pouch and pulled out a small data crystal. My parents prepared resources. This station is old, its systems are careless. Evan hesitated. You can hack station systems. Basic ones, Neary replied. I am still learning. Evan exhaled slowly. Of course you are. They moved again an hour later, blending into the station's forgotten arteries. Neary guided Evan through routes that bypassed active cameras. Evan could not tell how much of it was luck and how much was planning. At a quiet supply kiosk, Evan traded credits for ration packs and water filters. The vendor barely looked at him. Another human face in a place full of strangers. As they walked away, Evan noticed a figure across the corridor. Tall, armored. Corporate insignia half hidden under a coat. The figure's gaze locked onto Neary for half a second. Evan felt it instantly. He stepped in front of Neary without thinking, blocking the view. His posture shifted, shoulders squared, eyes cold. The figure paused, then turned away. Neary looked up at Evan. You did that without calculation. Evan kept walking. That's called instinct. Yes, Neary said softly. That is why I chose you. They reached Evan's sleep pod hours later. It was small, barely enough for one person. Evan stared at it, then down at Neary. This is going to be a problem, he said. I can sleep anywhere, Neary replied. Evan shook his head. You shouldn't have to. Inside the pod, Evan set up a small corner with blankets. Neary examined everything with quiet curiosity. You are nervous, Neary observed. Evan leaned against the wall. I've avoided attachments my whole life. Attachments make you predictable, Neary said. They make you vulnerable, Evan corrected. Yes, Neary agreed, but also dangerous. Evan laughed quietly. You really did your research. Neary lay down and curled up. Will you leave while I sleep? Evan stiffened. No, thank you, Neary said, eyes already closing. Evan sat on the edge of the pod, staring at the door. Outside, the station hummed with life, unaware that something had changed. Alerts continued to spread quietly through hidden networks. A Felric-skinned child had been claimed. By a human. People noticed. Evan did not sleep. He sat there all night, watching the door, listening to the breathing of a child who had chosen him as their last line of defense. And somewhere deep in the station's data cores, a warning flag pulsed softly. Human attachment detected. Potential escalation risk high. The galaxy, once again, had underestimated what humans did when someone called them family. Morning on Viewership Junction did not come with sunlight. It came with schedule resets, market noise, and the low vibration of docking clamps releasing ships into the void. Evan felt the change before he saw it. The station's rhythm shifted, and with it came danger. He had not slept. His eyes burned and his muscles ached from staying tense for too long. Neary slept curled up on the blanket, tail wrapped tight, breathing slow and even. The child looked peaceful, which somehow made Evan more uneasy. Evan checked his wrist implant again. No direct alerts. That did not mean they were safe. It meant someone was being careful. He quietly gathered their few supplies and waited until Neary woke up on their own. When the child opened their eyes, they looked directly at Evan, calm and alert, as if they had been awake the whole time. You did not leave, Neary said. I said I wouldn't, Evan replied. Neary sat up. Search patterns have widened. Evan raised an eyebrow. You can tell that just by listening. Yes, Neary said. The station traffic is wrong. Evan trusted that answer more than he wanted to. He packed the blankets back into his bag. Then we move again. They left the sleep pod and joined the flow of station workers heading toward the mid-levels. Evan kept his head down, one hand always near Neary's shoulder. To anyone watching, they looked like a tired human escorting a quiet child. Nothing special, nothing valuable. But Evan felt eyes on them. At a junction near a freight lift, a pair of station guards stood talking. Their posture changed when Evan passed. Not hostile, curious, assessing. Neary noticed it too. They are unsure, the child whispered. About what? Evan asked quietly. About whether stopping you is worth the trouble. Evan almost smiled. Almost. They took a detour through a market corridor filled with sound and color. Vendors shouted in a dozen languages. Scents mixed in the air. Crowds pressed close and Evan used them as cover. Then it happened. A hand reached out toward Neri. Evan reacted instantly. He turned, grabbed the wrist, twisted, and stepped forward, placing himself fully between the stranger and the child. The move was fast, practiced, and very human. The stranger gasped and stumbled back. He was tall, thin, and wearing a corporate badge half hidden under his coat. "I was just," the man started. "Walk away," Evan said, voice low and flat. The man hesitated. Evan did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He just stood there, eyes locked, body ready. Something passed between them, recognition, calculation. The man stepped back and disappeared into the crowd. Evan felt his heart pounding. Neri looked up at him. "You did not hesitate." "That's rule number 1, Evan said. "No one touches you." Neri nodded slowly. "My people have no equivalent behavior." Evan resumed walking. "That's because your people haven't been human long enough." They reached an old transit hub near the station's outer ring. The place was half abandoned, used mostly by independent pilots and cargo crews. Evan knew a few faces here, not friends exactly, but people who owed favors. He spotted a woman leaning against a cargo crate, arguing with a terminal. Short hair, heavy boots, grease-stained jacket. "Rhea," Evan called. She turned, eyes narrowing, then widening. "Evan Hale." "I thought you were dead." "Working on it," Evan replied. Her gaze dropped to Neri. She stiffened. "You're walking around with a Felric-skinned child," Evan cursed softly. "How do you know?" Rhea snorted. "Because half the shadow networks are buzzing about it." She looked around, then waved them closer. "You're causing problems." "I didn't start it," Evan said. Rhea studied him for a moment, then sighed. "You never do." She crouched in front of Neri, keeping her hands visible. "You picked him." "Yes," Neri replied. Rhea glanced back at Evan. "Figures." She stood and lowered her voice. "Listen, corporates want the kid alive. Black labs want them quiet. Station authority wants this to go away without paperwork. No one wants to touch a human guardian unless they're sure." Evan crossed his arms. "So what's your advice?" "Get off the station," Rhea said. "Fast." "I don't have a ship," Evan replied. Rhea smiled slowly. "You might." She led them to a battered freighter docked at the edge of the hub. It looked old, patched, and stubbornly functional. "My captain owes you," she said, "and he hates corporations." Evan hesitated. "Why help me?" Rhea shrugged. "Because every time humans get involved like this, something big happens. I don't want to be on the wrong side of it." Before Evan could answer, alarms sounded. Not loud. Not official, private alerts. Rhea's smile vanished. "They found you." The hub erupted into motion. Armed figures moved in from multiple entrances. Not station guards, professionals. Evan grabbed Neri and pulled them behind a cargo stack. "Stay down," he said. Neri crouched without question. A stun bolt slammed into the crate above Evan's head. Metal sparked. Evan peeked out, scanning angles. He spotted 3 attackers, coordinated, cutting off exits. "This was too fast," Evan muttered. "They anticipated human movement," Neri said quietly. "Then they made a mistake," Evan replied. He took a loose panel from the crate, tossed it high, then moved the opposite direction. A bolt fired at the distraction. Evan tackled the nearest attacker, using weight and momentum. He did not try to overpower. He disrupted. He broke formation. Rhea joined the fight, dragging another attacker down with a cargo hook. Within seconds, station alarms blared loudly. Real ones. The attackers retreated immediately. Silence fell, broken only by heavy breathing. Rhea stared at Evan. "You just escalated this." Evan looked at Neri, unharmed, eyes wide but steady. "They escalated first." Security drones flooded the hub moments later. Station guards followed. They froze when they saw Evan standing protectively in front of the child. A senior officer stepped forward. "Sir, you are involved in a sensitive situation." Evan met his gaze. "I'm aware." You are harboring a protected dependent, the officer continued. Evan nodded. Legally. The officer hesitated. His eyes flicked to Neary, then back to Evan. We request you come with us, he said carefully. Request denied, Evan replied. The air went still. Rhea sucked in a breath. Evan, I'm not surrendering the child, Evan said calmly. And you're not taking them without a court order. The officer clenched his jaw. He knew the law, everyone did. We can offer protection, he said. So can I, Evan replied. For a long moment no one moved. Then the officer stepped back. Clear the area, the guards obeyed. As they left, the officer paused beside Evan. Humans make things difficult. Evan shrugged. We get that a lot. Minutes later, they were aboard the freighter. The ship lifted away from the station, engines rumbling. Neary watched Vierk's junction shrink on the screen. You have now involved others. Evan leaned back in the pilot's chair. That was always going to happen. Are you afraid? Neary asked. Evan thought about it. Yes. Will you stop? Neary asked. Evan looked at the child, really looked, small, brave, trusting. No, he said, not anymore. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, news spread quietly through the galaxy. A human had claimed a Felric-skinned child and refused to let go. History suggested that was when things started breaking. The freighter came out of hyperspace with a hard shudder that rattled every loose panel. Evan grabbed the armrest, steadying himself, while Neary held on quietly, eyes wide but calm. Outside the viewport, a pale blue star burned against the dark, and a thin ring of dust marked the edge of a forgotten system. Rhea's captain, an older man named Karsk, checked the instruments and frowned. We're clear of Vierks, he said, but not clear of trouble. Evan did not ask what he meant, he already knew. Long-range sensors began to chirp, passive scans first, careful, watching. They followed us, Evan asked. Karsk shook his head. Not directly, but word travels faster than ships. Neary leaned forward slightly. This system is outside corporate space, the child said, neutral but weak. That means no one will protect us, Evan said. And no one will stop us, Rhea added. The freighter drifted toward a small, rocky station orbiting a dead moon. It was old, patched together from different eras with human design written all over it. Boxy structures, thick armor plates, ugly but strong. What's this place? Evan asked. Greyhaven, Karsk replied. Human-run, mostly independents. Dockworkers, pilots, families who don't trust big governments. Evan felt something ease in his chest. As they docked, Evan noticed movement on the station exterior. People stopped what they were doing and watched the freighter arrive. Not with fear, with curiosity. Word had arrived before them. Inside the station, the air smelled of oil, metal, and cooked food. Human voices filled the corridors, laughter, arguing, life. As Evan and Neary stepped off the ship, conversations paused, eyes turned. Some people stared openly at Neary. Others looked at Evan with something close to respect. A woman in a station jacket approached, hands open. You the human with the kid, Evan tensed. Who's asking? She smiled slightly. Someone who doesn't like corporations stealing children. Evan relaxed a fraction. More people gathered, dockworkers, mechanics, a few armed security volunteers, no uniforms, just humans who had decided this was their station. Neary looked around slowly. There are many humans here. Yes, Evan said, and that's important. The woman nodded. Station council wants to talk to you, Evan sighed. Of course they do. The council chamber was simple, a round table, old screens, no grand symbols. 6 humans sat there, different ages, different backgrounds, all watching Evan and Neary closely. One of them, a gray-haired man with tired eyes, spoke first. You've put us in a difficult position. Evan met his gaze. I didn't ask for help. No, the man said, but you came here. Yes, Evan replied. Because this is one of the few places that still believes a person is a person. Silence followed. Another council member, a woman with cybernetic hands, leaned forward. We know the law. The child chose you. That bond is real. And dangerous, someone else added. They'll pressure us, sanctions, threats. Evan nodded. I know. Neary stepped forward then, small but steady. If you surrender me, they will harm others later. This pattern repeats. The council members exchanged looks. The gray-haired man exhaled slowly. Humans have a long history with that kind of logic. He looked at Evan. If we protect you, this station becomes a target. Evan did not hesitate. Then I'll help defend it. That earned a few smiles. The decision did not take long. Greyhaven declared protective asylum. The response was immediate. Within hours, corporate envoys began sending messages. Polite at first, requests for discussion, offers of compensation. Then came threats disguised as warnings. Trade routes might shift, supplies might dry up. The station council listened, then ignored them. Meanwhile, something else happened. Humans talked. Messages spread through private channels. Old crews, former soldiers, dockhands on distant stations. The story was simple and clear. A human claimed a child. Others wanted to take that child. That was all it took. Ships began arriving at Greyhaven. Not warships, old freighters, personal craft, mining vessels with reinforced hulls. Each one crewed by humans who remembered what it meant to protect family, even chosen family. Evan watched from a viewport as they docked. They're coming because of you, he said quietly. Neary shook their head. They are coming because of themselves. The pressure escalated. A corporate task force arrived at the edge of the system. They did not cross into Greyhaven space, but they made sure everyone could see them. A message came through on open channels. A calm voice, carefully neutral. Hand over the Felric-skinned child and no further action will be taken. The station council transmitted a reply. No. The task force repositioned, closer this time. Evan stood in the command room beside station security volunteers. He was armed now, not because he wanted to fight, but because humans prepared. Neary stood near him, watching the screens. They will not attack directly, the child said. Too many humans. Then what? Evan asked. They will try to make examples elsewhere, Neary replied. As if summoned by the words, alerts flashed, reports from nearby systems, corporate raids, pressure applied to human communities. The council members clenched their fists. They're trying to scare us, Rhea said. Evan's jaw tightened. They picked the wrong species. He turned to the council. Let me speak. They hesitated, then nodded. Evan opened a system-wide broadcast, not just to the task force, but to every listening channel. This is Evan Hale, he said. I'm the human guardian you're so interested in. The corporate commander appeared on the screen. You are outmatched, the man said calmly. Evan nodded. Probably, but you're still refusing. Yes. Why? The commander asked. You gain nothing. Evan looked down at Neary, then back at the screen. You don't understand humans. We don't measure everything in gain. The commander frowned slightly. When someone chooses us, Evan continued, we don't see an asset, we see responsibility, and we don't hand that over. The commander's eyes hardened. This will have consequences. Evan leaned closer to the camera. So will yours. The broadcast ended. The task force did not attack. Instead, they withdrew slowly, calculating costs. Behind the scenes, legal battles ignited. Interstellar courts, emergency rulings, precedents dusted off and argued over. One thing became clear very quickly. The law was on Evan's side. And changing it would take time, a lot of time. Time humans were very good at using. Days passed, then weeks. Greyhaven became a symbol, a place where humans stood their ground not for profit but for principle. Donations flowed in. Supplies arrived. Even non-humans began to speak out quietly at first. Neary attended classes with other children on the station, learned human games, human stories. Evan watched from a distance, feeling something unfamiliar growing in his chest. Pride. One evening, as they sat together in a small observation room, Neary spoke softly. My people believed humans were chaotic, the child said, unstable. Evan smiled faintly. We are. But also consistent, Neary added. When it matters. Evan placed a hand on the glass. Yeah. When it matters. A message arrived that night. The interstellar court recognized the adoption, fully, permanently. The task force left the system. The station erupted in cheers. Evan closed his eyes, breathing out a long breath he felt he had been holding for months. Neary looked up at him. It is over, Evan shook his head. No, it's just beginning. Because across the galaxy something had shifted. Humans had reminded everyone of an old truth. You could outgun them, you could outnumber them, but if you tried to take what they called family, they would not bend. The station did not quiet down after the court ruling. If anything, Greyhaven grew louder. Ships continued to arrive, even though the threat had passed. Humans stayed longer than they needed to. They repaired old sections, shared meals, told stories, and laughed a little too loudly, as if daring the galaxy to challenge them again. Evan felt the change most clearly in the way people looked at Neary, not as a prize, not as a problem, as a child. Neary walked the station corridors freely now, tail swaying, ears high. Other children ran beside them, human and non-human alike. Some were curious, some were shy. None were afraid. Evan watched from a distance, leaning against a railing, arms crossed. He still wore his old jacket, still avoided crowds when he could, but something inside him had settled. The constant tightness in his chest had eased. You look uncomfortable, Rhea said, coming to stand beside him. I don't trust quiet happiness, Evan replied. Rhea laughed. That's the most human thing I've heard today. Evan glanced at her. What happens now? Now, Rhea shrugged. Now you live, Evan snorted softly. I was hoping you wouldn't say that. Later that day, the station council asked Evan to attend one final meeting, not for judgment. For closure, the gray-haired councilman spoke first. The court's ruling is final. The adoption is recognized across interstellar space. Evan nodded. He had already read the document 3 times. You're free to leave, the woman with cybernetic hands added. Or stay. Greyhaven is open to you, Evan hesitated. He had spent years running from places, from roots. I'll stay, he said finally, at least for a while. The council members smiled, not the polite kind, the relieved kind. After the meeting, Evan found Neary sitting by the observation window, staring out at the stars. The child held a small data slate, but it rested forgotten in their lap. You are thinking loudly, Neary said without turning. Evan sat beside them. Am I that obvious? Yes. Evan watched the distant lights of ships moving like slow fireflies. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Neary tilted their head. Because things were wrong for a long time. Evan nodded. Neary looked back out into space. My people believed safety was temporary. That danger always returned. Evan considered that. They weren't wrong. But humans, Neary continued, believe safety is something you build even if it breaks. Evan smiled faintly. Yeah, we're stubborn like that. There was a pause. Evan, Neary asked. Yeah. Am I still welcome? The question hit him harder than any threat ever had. Evan turned fully toward the child. Neary, you didn't just choose me. He placed a hand gently on Neary's shoulder. You belong here with me. Neary's ears twitched, then flattened briefly as their eyes shone. Then I chose correctly. Life settled into a new rhythm. Evan took work again, but this time it was different. He helped maintain station defenses. He trained volunteers. He taught young pilots how to fly smart instead of fast. People listened to him now. Not because he was important, because he had stood when it mattered. Neary studied alongside other children, but also learned things no classroom taught. How humans solved problems by arguing loudly and then sharing food. How humans protected each other without contracts. How humans said, I've got you, and meant it. Sometimes visiting diplomats came to Greyhaven, curious or cautious. They asked questions about the adoption, about the standoff, about why humans had rallied so fiercely. Evan never attended those meetings. Neary did. The child spoke calmly, clearly, without anger. I was not saved, Neri told them. I was chosen, and I chose back. The message spread. Other species began reviewing their own laws. Quiet changes followed. Protection strengthened. Loopholes closed, not because of fear of humans, because of respect. One evening, as Greyhaven rotated into shadow, Evan and Neri shared a meal in their small quarters. The room was still simple, but it felt lived in now. A place, not a shelter. Neri paused mid-bite. Evan, why did you really stay? Evan leaned back, thinking. At first, because running stopped working. And now, Evan looked around the room, at the scuffed floor. The light hum of station power. The quiet breathing of someone who trusted him completely. Because this feels like home, he said. Neri nodded. Yes, that word fits. Much later, after Neri had fallen asleep, Evan stood by the viewport alone. Stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass. The galaxy was still dangerous, still unfair, but something had changed. News channels still referenced the event, not as a conflict, not as a legal case, as a reminder. A human had been offered credits. He had been offered safety. He chose responsibility instead. Other humans watched and remembered who they were. Evan felt a small hand slip into his. He looked down. Neri stood beside him, half awake. Bad dreams? Evan asked. No, Neri replied. Just wanted to be sure you were still here. Evan squeezed their hand gently, not going anywhere. They stood together in silence, watching the stars. Somewhere far away, decisions were being made. Quiet ones, careful ones. The kind made by species that had learned a lesson. Do not threaten what humans call family. Because humans will not ask permission. They will not wait for approval. They will stand. And when they do, the galaxy listens.